Whether you're a fan or not, comics will have touched your life at some point. Many of the medium's critics would suggest that they are a lower form of culture, for children who won't read books or who have no imagination. But as you will see, this is far from the case.
It didn't occur to me that I could actually make a living doing comic books. When I was on the dole, I started doing a comic because I met this chap in London. Lee Harris, his name is. I showed him some artwork and he said, oh, if you ever do a comic, I'll publish it. And I finished the college course, I was unemployed. I thought I might as well do this comic book for Lee.
It started with the cavemen, the Egyptians and the Aztecs. Then King Harold took one in the eye and some satirists created the Bayeux tapestry. Yellow Kid arrived in print during 1896 when a clever fella called Fenton created a speech bubble, and from this the comic as we know it was born. In the 30s, comics became all exciting with adventure over politics and the superhero was spawned. Flash Gordon, Superman, Batman and Captain America saved the world on a weekly basis, thus capturing the imagination of a generation. But it wasn't all saving the earth with your superpowers. Everything and anything was targeted to be animated. Even European erotica. Yes, that's you, Milo Manara. Censorship in the 70s pushed the movement underground, but it re-emerged stronger and more inventive, with Mutant Turtles, manga and Pokemon. Brian comes into this roughly 2/3 of the way through.
It's as good a medium as any other. It can be as good as movies, can be as good as text novels, theatre, you name it. I've heard comics described as a marriage between two art forms, illustration, literature. And I don't think this is strictly speaking true because comics have their own history and their own traditions and conventions and things. A love of illustration is fundamental to the ability to be able to appreciate comics. Well, in France it's called l'art nouveau, you know, the ninth art. And if you go to Paris, you'll see these huge bookstores that sell nothing but these beautifully produced hardback graphic novels.
Comic books are clearly recognised as an art form in the film world. Countless films, delightful or dire, have been made from or inspired by comics. Hellboy, X-Men, Spider-Man, The Hulk, Batman, The Road to Perdition, Ghost World and the new release Sin City, to name but a few.
Well, they're very patchy and it all depends who's making them. I've seen one or two of the superhero ones and they're quite, they're quite entertaining and everything, but the best ones, probably not the superhero comics. Films like Ghost World or Road to Perdition is based on a comic book.
Comic book characters tend to crop up everywhere, from newspapers, magazines, television and the silver screen. We all recognise them, but what about Brian's own Chester P. Hackenbush from the Brainstorm Comics? Is this name about to claim global recognition?
Brainstorm Comics were basically Alice in Wonderland. They had this character called Chester P. Hackenbush, the psychedelic alchemist. And each of the comics was he'd go on a trip at the beginning of the comic and come down at the end. That was it. And what happened in between would be the adventure, would be the story. Actually, at the moment, there's a rapper in London. His stage name is Chester P. Hackenbush, because he used to read his parents' underground comics when he was 9.
But he is only one of the millions of comic fans the world over. They turn up in their droves, dressed up in imitation of their heroes, and to meet their idols at conventions all over the globe. However, Brian has seen the turnout at his signings decline dramatically in recent years.
When we first started doing signings, they hadn't really been done before to a large extent, and we used to have tons of people turn up. Like when I did the first signing I did in Ireland, it was only the second ever signing by a comic artist in Northern Ireland, and I was signing for over 4 hours. The Forbidden Planet in London used to have signings in the Cafe Munchin just around the corner, this big long bar, and the queue went from one end of the bar all the way through the bar, out and all round the pub, right into Oxford Street. But now, I do as I have a look if I get 25 people turning up. Bob Monkhouse, he's a big fan of comics. He had a huge collection of comics. He also had the biggest private film collection in the country. And he actually started out as a comic artist. in the 90s, there was a big artificial boom that was created by comic companies to a large extent and speculators. You know, we thought these things were going to be worth some money in the future, so you know, every comic came out, people were buying 10 issues, putting them in bags and putting them in a safe deposit box, you know, naively thinking they were going to be worth a lot of money in a few years. Well, obviously, if everybody's doing that, they're not going to be worth anything, you know, because they won't be rare. And the sales of like monthly superhero titles has been gradually going down for the last 10 years. But the market for graphic novels has been actually rising. It goes up every month. I've heard it described last month as the biggest, I think it's the biggest growing area of fiction in the last 100 years.
Whether Brian is correct with his fortune telling remains to be seen. New technology and the digital age may yet render pen, paper and the printed image obsolete. Only time will tell. Will you play a part in keeping these legends alive?